Let the board start with the whole committee chair, and I'm going to take it over. Thank you. So let's approve the agenda.
Sunday.
All those in favor say aye once. We have approved the agenda. Hope you had a chance to look at the minutes. I am now looking for a motion to approve them. This is April 3rd meeting. Discussion? All in favor? We have approved the minutes. And now it is time for public participation. Anyone from the public want to speak? I will read the spiel, otherwise I will read the spiel. There's no one on the line. No one's on the line and no one present. Okay, then we don't have to do that. Middle school report. Now I'm going to let Kristen say a couple of words, but I just want to say thoroughly enjoyed the walkthrough, always do, and heard Brandenburg Concerto number 5 being played by a room full of seventh grade string students, and it was not only recognizable, it was good. So that was pleasant. And then Kristen, I'm sure will fill in with other things, but that was what I wanted.
Sure. Keep forgetting you. Put me on the spot when we do these stories. So yeah, John and I had the opportunity to come yesterday to the middle school, which was a great tour. Thank you to Mrs. Rinaldi. We got to go into, like John said, the music room and hear he knew the name of the piece. I did not. Hear the orchestra, 7th grade orchestra play, and they were really good. I don't know anything about music, but they were quite good. So we also had the opportunity to go into some classrooms. We saw pretty much every subject there was. We did see there were lunch waves. We saw kids behaving in hallways. Yeah, I mean, it was a really nice tour, and I thank you very much for your hospitality. And I did get the opportunity to embarrass at least one of my children, which was nice. And from Jim walked right past me, refused to make eye contact. So yeah, but that's it. We had a great time. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
And you have a report for us.
I do. First of all, you all walked into our brand new foyer, so I hope you liked it. Did an amazing job putting that in. I do have to send kudos out to the facilities. They were amazing to work with. So we're really excited to have that making our school more secure. So with that, thank you very much for this opportunity to tell you about all the amazing things that are happening here. We're going to kick it off by sort of talking about in middle school, we want us all to be the best version of you. That's what we tell kids. Be the best version of yourself. And for middle schoolers, that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of intentional decision making. So we kind of started the year with, and you can answer it, expect greater things. You all know that last year we had to expect great things. We wanted people to know that great things can happen in middle school. We wanted people to believe that. So this year we really wanted them to take hold of the idea that they're empowered to have great things happen, and that's through their decision making. So that's been a theme that we've been working through all year. And the first set of pictures is through our instructional improvement team. So we've been working on intentional decision making for teachers, for students, for administrators, for department leaders. We partnered with OTL to do instructional rounds and to determine what our next levels of work are academically. That's been well received by teachers, and it's been extremely beneficial for all of us. We've worked a lot on academic excellence. You can advance the slide, and here's just some pictures of some of the amazing things. But what we're finding is that students are excelling in all of the different programs that we normally have. You normally had a typical group of kids who excel. We've really thought of some out of the box programming for some of our kids, and we're seeing kids who may not have typically done well in a middle school winning state level awards. So we're proud of that. Within the classrooms, kids are really working on deeper levels of thinking, peer critiques. And as you can see in the bottom picture, we're combining grade levels of kids where they're producing work, they're critiquing work, they're learning how to do that respectfully, and they're learning how to support one another to be better students. But along with that all, we have to work on our community building. We have to make sure that we are a place that people want to be. We've done that through some things like our fun run, which I gotta tell you, it was cold up here on that rainy morning, but it certainly had fun. And it was great to see teachers come out with families to participate in it. We find that our teachers are really getting excited about different things that we're holding to build community within the school, like our Feeling Well Fridays. In the bottom picture, they all know that I love Minions, so they graced me with their Minion outfits one day. But really, we're trying to really improve the school community so that we're learning at high levels and that we all want to get. And one of the big things that we're really working on in middle school is spreading kindness. We've had so many get-togethers with the kids. We've had T-shirts spreading kindness like snowflakes, students writing words of kindness about people, staff members and other students and handing those in. All of that to try to really reinforce that when they're kind, we all do better. And it's a continual process in working with middle schools and middle school students. And it's continually saying, you know, was that kind? Would you want that done to you? And if we all remember back, middle school is a tough time. It's where we're learning that. So we're constantly working as a school to say this is a kind community. When I first came here, which was last year, I asked all the staff members that I talked to, give me one word that describes this school. Give me one word. I was a new principal coming into the building, and I kind of want to know where it started. And the one word that came out from, and you're laughing at me, Kim, because you know this, the one word that came out was traumatized. That, if we did a word cloud, that would be the big word in the middle. At the end of the year, we asked them the same thing. Give us the one word that best describes our building. And the word that came out in the word cloud was progressing. So we're excited this year, once the year comes at the end with all of the work that we've done, to see what that word is for this year, what they think our building is. Now, to move from traumatized to progressing takes a huge amount of work from multiple people. And we are so fortunate in the school to have dedicated staff members, dedicated teachers, and a dedicated administrative team who have really parceled out the work and taken ownership and responsibility of the work to move this school forward. So I'm going to let each of them speak a little bit about their parts and their piece within moving our building forward.
I am Kathleen. I'm the Dean of Students. My primary roles here are working as the administrative person for our students and working with our security team. So as the point person for students, some of the things that we've done together are implement a cafeteria behavior incentive plan. So we work to flip the script in the cafeteria from something negative where there's consequences. If you don't do this, then we'll do this, to if we do this, these are the positives that have come from it. So students at all grade levels have been working towards different incentives, and all of grade levels have earned at least one or more incentives throughout the year. So things like they had a homework free night, they had a student choice spirit day. There's one grade level that is close to earning a compilation of their playlist, and we'll play it in the cafeteria while they're having lunch. So things like that. I prefer students of being self-advocates through our incident report process, which we are now calling our student report process, because not everything is an incident or a negative thing. So students can come into our student support center in the back office, and they can report things that they need support with. And many of those things come through me, and those are handled a variety of ways. In many circumstances, we're using restorative practices to support kids in restoring relationships with each other, restoring relationships with staff. And so that's the preferred way of handling things, but also I do support our administrative team with student discipline when that's appropriate. In terms of the security team, we've been working to review and revise our systems so that they're more effective and efficient. We've used the PLC process to identify and tackle problems that growth opportunities really within our community. So that the start of that was our cafeteria piece. That was something they really wanted to work on together. And that's where our incentive plan came from. Once we felt like that was really under control, we started talking about things like hallway traffic. So we started thinking about when we let kids out of the cafeteria, that's a big traffic area, that's a big transition. There's lots of kids in the hallway. And there are different things going on. There are kids going where they're not supposed to go. There are kids trying to take advantage of a longer transition or purposely being where they're not supposed to be so they can be late. So we look for ways that we can kind of funnel the traffic coming out of the cafeteria into correct direction. So the kids are going directly where they need to go. And we've really been able to cut down traffic in places where it doesn't belong and get kids to class sooner. And then as a team, we worked on developing an operations manual for the security team, which has really served as a guide. And that started with what is the way that we want to do things as a team together. And we realized that that can also serve as just the guidebook. So when we have new people coming in and we want to make sure that they are learning things the way that we do them as a team and it's consistent and uniform, so we can go back to that manual again and again.
Okay, Teresa, one of the assistant principals here. I am in charge of school safety and crisis teams. I work on the creation of the safety procedures and drills, making sure that all staff know those drills and know the safety protocols and sort of the backups in the different places to keep everybody safe, certainly our students and themselves. So we offer the trainings for those for staff as well. We do safety debriefings after we run our drills to make sure that we're continually improving and fixing those things that we need to fix because stuff happens or that we can think of in different given situations. So they've been really helpful. I also work with our mental health team, which comprises of our social workers and our counselors, even our BCBA and our psychologists, and then other administration to make sure that we have procedures in place for those crisis situations when we have kids that are really struggling and in crisis, and making sure that everyone knows what those procedures are and how we move forward in creating a consistency. Internal communications is also another area that I work on. We have an internal website. So obviously we're a large school. We have a large population of staff and all of them computers and we are trying to find things and not sure where stuff is. So I created a website that helps break down those different things, those daily need, quick buttons that they can click on, those others, hey, you're going to need this during testing time, and making sure that all of that information that gets funneled through email or other types of avenues are in one central place so that if we have new staff coming in, they're able to go right to that area and find information. We even have a button of a local area to order food from or run out to on some of our half days if we get, and actually the staff really appreciated that. Someone new to the town area, I think of some of the go-to places you wouldn't know about, and then certainly local places like Target, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens to get to quickly if you need something. So that was really neat. And then I send out a weekly staff bulletin for the staff just in upcoming events to just keep everybody on task and moving. We kind of forget in the course of a week, even a month, as to what's coming up and just making sure everyone's fully aware of that. So Saturdays or Sundays are my day to make sure I get that out and see everybody. I also work on facilities. I work closely with our head custodian, Mark Burke, and our other day custodian, Dean Barth, and our night guys, and just making sure our building stays very clean and beautiful even. We've done a lot of improvements from where we were. Actually, COVID kind of helped us in that capacity, but we're keeping up on those things so that we can keep our school clean. Yes, we have middle schoolers. Yes, some people say treat things like their rooms. So we work hard to make sure that happens and ensuring that the staff have what they need, knows those procedures. Again, safety is a part of that, making sure propping doors and closing our windows at night to make sure we keep our facility running appropriately. We also have food labs and a couple kitchens within the building, so we make sure that we're abiding by our health codes and following those, but that those areas are clean and healthy for kids to be able to use, with staff members to be able to have experiences like cooking and other types of experiments and things like that. I also work with 8th grade for the 8th grade to 9th grade transition and 8th grade class night. We've done class night for a number of years, a little bit of a pause during COVID, but we're back and rocking and rolling. So we're on the coordination with the staff there. And it's a great event. Lots of staff come out for it, offer volunteer hours for making decorations and serving food and orders and things like that for the kids to have a really special night with their class, one of their last nights with their class. And then continuing to work with the high school for transition with enrolling students for guidance into their 8th grade, from their 8th grade to their 9th grade year. On Friday, we have the sports and clubs from the high school coming up to be able to offer our 8th graders what's going to happen for them, so that kind of get a kickstart for sign up for fall sports and clubs that they would be interested in moving forward. So those are the things I do.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Myers, one of the assistant principals. So one of the big things that I have taken on the last few years is facilitating testing here in the building, which really is a year-long undertaking. So first I coordinate with OTL at different points during the year to make sure that we're all on track and getting our testing within certain testing windows. And that primarily is for STAR testing. We give STAR testing 3 times a year, as you may be aware. That's our progress monitoring. I also work with our instructional coaches very closely to make sure that they're helping to facilitate that as well. And it's a lot of communication, as I'm sure you could guess, with our staff members. This year, we also had to give the NAEP test, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And there are multiple schools chosen throughout the country to give that assessment. It's grades 3 through 8. And it's 50 randomly chosen students in 8th grade that were selected for that test. So I had to coordinate with an outside organization, the NAEP organization, to administer that test. So there's a lot of background work that went into that. So we did that testing in February. So then, of course, the ESPA testing and the NGSS testing. So something new that we did this year was actually give the practice test to the entire school at a particular time. And that the reason for that was actually twofold. We wanted first our students to go through the practice, even though they've taken the test before. We wanted to simulate kind of some test taking. We wanted them to have the opportunity to practice their test taking strategies. We wanted them to practice the tools that are embedded in the test. And we also wanted our teachers to have the opportunity to practice, setting up the test session. The test is all online, so, so having given, since it's been a year since they've given the test, just getting back in that habit of how to do it again. So that's why we did the practice test this year. So our official first testing date for ESPA is coming up on Monday. So we'll be testing all next week. And then we have the makeup test after that. So there's been a lot of preparation work for the testing. I also work a lot on school climate. I'm one of the co-advisors for our Student Leadership Council. So this year we really put a lot into our school dances. That was something that the kids really wanted. So we had 2 dances per grade level this year. We also had a lot of spirit weeks. I also do the morning announcements, which is more than just actually getting up and speaking on the loudspeaker. We do quotes of the day every day. I look for opportunities to recognize student achievements. But we also, we're thoughtful about what we say to the kids. When they're days before vacation, reminding the kids of expectations, and but we still want kids to participate in their classes, and just general expectations. So it's actually something that we've done a little bit more formally this year, I would say. Also, Staff morale is something that we focused on a lot also. We've done all sorts of fun games and with the staff, we've done spirit weeks just for staff. We've done quizzes and holiday countdowns, and we're in the throes of Flamingo Friday, which I know is one of Mr. Scott's favorite things, which is scared. So, and again, fun prizes and dress ups, and and I think those things are actually really important for the staff. And I've had a lot of staff, we all have had a lot of staff reach out to us saying that they look forward to those things. So that's something that I've been focusing on a lot too. And finally, 5th to 6th grade transition. I actually just reached out to Marianne today about our 6th grade orientation that we like to do. We had our counselors have a virtual presentation for our 5th graders. So that's going to be coming up pretty soon. And I work with our counselors to get that.
All right. All right, so I'm Gavin Craig. I'm one of the third and final assistant principal at Middle School. As you kind of hear, there's a lot of work done on a day-to-day basis. My work is primarily kind of a lot of the behind the scenes and prior work in terms of scheduling, and then in terms of developing systems for things like team meetings to make sure that we're addressing and supporting all of our students. So in terms of scheduling, this year's schedule was a lot of effort and time invested, having teachers be a part of the committee process in the 22-23 year. And over several sessions, we were able to add an average of over 600 instructional minutes per class per year, which essentially equates to about 11 and a half new class periods that we did not have in the previous years. So really getting more seat time for students in front of teachers was a high priority for both teachers and for everybody else involved in the committee. We also made sure that all of our students received physical education class as well, because that was something that was somewhat of a challenge in previous iterations of schedules. So as part of the state requirement, we want to make sure that that happened. And then working with, our teachers to really kind of make sure that they have time in their schedule for collaborative planning, in addition to their daily preps as well, so that they can continue to do the work in terms of curriculum instruction, formative assessments, and really kind of pushing that work forward. Going into next year, if anybody knows that they worked on any sort of schedule, it does not start in the fall, it starts the year prior. So we moved up our timeline going into this fall. And we've already sent out and have, about 60% of our schedule set already at this point. That we were not at that point until about mid-July this past year. So we are kind of moving that timeline forward, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that everything works well, that our students are supported, that our teachers have an even better idea than what they did leaving the building last year as to what they're going to be working with going into the fall. But then we also want to have more family and parent participation as well in this. So there's going to be letters that are going out to all of our families that identify what our recommendations are as a school, whether it be for taking an algebra class, Spanish, whether or not they were recommended for band course or orchestra coming into 6th grade, and other supports and services, so that parents are informed kind of participants in their child's learning. And so that feedback will help us kind of turn those recommendations into requests for students and placing them into classes, so that there's less movement that we have been having at the beginning of those first couple of weeks of school, which does cause a little bit of, struggles at times. And so doing this work now will help us for the fall. In addition to that, we're also improving upon this year's schedule to have go through because we've learned a few things along the way. Similar to what Kathleen said in terms of movement throughout the building, we're building our schedule to design it so that we have a flow of students. So in terms of structure for that, but then also the better collaboration as well between both the receiving schools, so to the high school, but then to sending schools as well in terms of the information that's gathered so that we can effectively plan and schedule for our students in record time at this point. Then in terms of our team meetings are what our core teachers work within their team of students, and all students are reviewed. This happens twice in a 7-day cycle. And all students are being reviewed in terms of their performance, both in terms of their grades, but then also their attendance. And then as we identify students through that process, we're looking to celebrate those students that are doing well. And so using this process to funnel towards things like house awards, positive phone calls. And then for those students that we're identifying that need more support, we are targeting just for those students that we've identified through this process to then receive that support in a more systematic fashion. And so one of the ways that this helps us is that we have a limited number of resources in terms of our specialists. So across the different grade levels, across the different teams, that funnels us into what's called our student success team, our student support team, and what helps us then deploy those specialist resources to the students that need it the most, and not just for the students or the team that has spoken up the most in this case. And then finally, the system review team helps us just kind of continuously look to how we can improve upon all of our systems as well. And so we meet on that periodically as well. So beyond even the team meeting, we're in sort of our systems and helping us improve as we go throughout the year. Stand back to Sheldon.
So we really want our kids to get involved. When they're involved in their community, when they're involved in their school, they do better. So we've been looking a lot to expand our offerings to our students, and we're using that coming from our students' suggestions. So here's a list of kind of what we've offered, and Youth Entrepreneur Club was one that started last year. We were kind of wondering, was it going to continue this year? Would we still have interest in it? For the first meeting of the club, there were 24 students. So the club was started by a student last year. It was taken over by another student, and it continues to move forward, as well as our Best Buddies program, which combines students of different backgrounds to support one another and to be able to build partnerships. And then we were kind of thinking, was this a one-off, or these new ideas just coming one year? So we really continued to work on it this year, and what we found is we actually expanded more opportunities. So Josh, if you can move the slide forward. This year, we've really worked on expanding our clubs and activities. Our student council has grown and is much more formalized. We now have a cheer team, which collaborates with the high school and will feed into there. Our students were so excited about that. We have an environmental club that's working in a collaborative effort with our PTO to do an outdoor learning space. So together they're doing work which will beautify the area as well as create opportunities for learning outside. We also have a comic book club in our 6th grade class, which is really exciting. They're actually working on writing different things within that. So that was a 6th grader who stepped up and said, I'd really like to do this club. So those are kind of student clubs. We also have a lot more enrichments and supports, and those have been a great collaboration with OTL has helped us a lot with that. With our Viking Time program, which now are identified students receiving a more structured support after school. We have high dose tutoring throughout the day, which is tutoring for math for identified students. We've really worked on an alternative program to create a more structured system with levels of autonomy to support our students. And then you've heard a lot about the TAG program through Laura that's really offered our kids a lot more opportunities. In addition to that, our counselors have really worked into pushing into the school community. They're doing grade level push-ins with identified topics that kids need to know at certain grade levels. They've also worked on sports contracts to really identify students who want to join a sport but don't have the grades for it. That we're meeting with them weekly in order to help them maintain eligibility. We have academic contracts. We've been working on transition planning. They've also done the 8th grade award ceremony, which now there will be accolades from every content area. And they've been doing formalized lunch groups with our students. One of the other things that we really take pride in this year is our student support center. As we're working to build student advocacy, we want kids to come to us when they have conflict. We want them to tell us what their needs are. So we created a specific spot where they go. They're really getting used to it. They're reminded a lot about it. And I remember when we first started talking about this, people said, kids aren't going to come on their own to report things to you. So what happens is they do. And then what happens is what they report is reviewed immediately. If it's a concern that maybe a counselor could handle, it gets handled off to a counselor for mediation or talking through conflict resolution. But if it's something of more serious concern, it goes directly to an administrator. The first level would be our dean and the second level would be our assistant principals. So this has allowed us to get support to kids quicker. It's allowed our teachers to focus more on classroom teaching because we're taking the reports from the students in the Student Resource Center. So for the people who said that nobody would ever come, we can go to the next slide and show the data. We track every single student initiated report. We started tracking in November, so probably like half the month, but you can see each month in March, 167 students came in of their own volition, not prompted, to say, I need help with someone, because somebody help me.
I never said it was going to by the way.
I wasn't here to tell you when we're sorry. Can't blame me.
No, it didn't.
The next slide is, it has to do with our Yonder initiative that we have here at the middle school. So if you're not aware, the Yonder pouches are little pouches that kids can lock their cell phone in at the beginning of the day. Specific policy related to their phones and personal devices. And we track each instance, and we've been very true to that policy in terms of following it to the letter. And when we're looking at data, we noticed that there was a decrease in incidents involving cell phones and other personal devices. And the decrease initially appeared small, and then we realized we were kind of doing an apples to oranges comparison, because when we looked at last year's data, we realized that we only tracked cell phone violations, whereas this year we have held kids accountable for devices that, if they've got a device that's linked to a cell phone inside their pouch and they're still listening or making text messages through an earpod, or we have a situation with kids that are sending things back and forth through their watch. So we did hold them accountable if they're sending messages through their watches, or one day we did have a kid pull an entire gaming laptop on his back with controls and everything. And we counted that because that's not what we're supposed to be doing here. So we went back and extracted from this year just the cell phone issues, so that we can see what it looks like when we look at just cell phones to cell phones. And when we did that, we saw a very dramatic decrease. And what we looked at was 6th grade, the group of kids that are 7th graders now. So we looked to see how many violations they had as 6th graders versus how many they had this year. Last year, there were 33 students in that cohort that had one or more instance with their cell phone out. This year, there were only 15. And then in terms of the cohort that moved from 7th to 8th grade as 7th graders, they had 75 instances last year of children with one or more cell phone violation, which has decreased all the way down to 18 instances of cell phones this year. So when we compared the equivalent data in terms of cell phones, we noticed a very dramatic difference. So that is really working here at the middle school.
So, of course, as we encourage students to get involved, one of the things that we as administrators and our counselors and social workers stay on top of is students' attendance. Because, of course, we need kids to be here, to be engaged in their classes, to make sure that they're learning. So our attendance data, as we're going to see in a second, really has made an improvement overall. We've seen a decrease in our absentee rates compared to last year. So each month, the assistant principals have meetings with our social workers and the counselors that are on our teams so that we can take a look at our attendance data. We make parent phone calls. We have parent meetings about attendance. We also have the LEAP program, as I'm sure you're aware of, where staff members go out and do home visits if necessary. We did have a little bit of a spike in November and December this year, which probably is attributable to colds and flus and that sort of thing. If we go to the next slide, please, Josh.
What is the ABA, but what is ABA stand for?
Attendance. Sorry.
Thank you.
So, yeah, sorry. So if we look at this next slide, this compares our grade level data. So the eighth grade does have slightly more attendance issues than some of our other grades, but when we looked at this attendance data compared to last year's attendance data, we actually had a decrease of approximately 7.5% overall of students that were chronically absent. So we're definitely making gains in the right direction.
All right. So I have the privilege of kind of helping oversee the math department, so I'll kind of take on the responsibility of showing you our middle school stuff performance so far. So this is through our winter test session. We're actually just finishing up our spring testing window this week. So we're excited to kind of see the outcome in comparison to what you're seeing before you here. So just to kind of make sure that everybody is aware, the STAR test is a computer adaptive type of test. It's a short kind of one period type of test that identifies gaps in learnings, but then also helps us program for both curriculum and instructional practices and approaches. And what you are going to see here is in terms of a percentile. Percentile is if all the students took this test at any one point in time, and that equals to 100 students, where that student falls within that 1 to 100 is where they are compared to every other student that takes that test. So if they are anywhere between the 40th to the 60th percentile, that is considered directly on grade level or within kind of that average range. So as you can kind of see in the chart, one thing to kind of note is you'll see the blue is from the fall, the red is from the winter. And we kind of broke this down in terms of bands. So students that are below the 25th percentile, then between the 25th and the 49th percentile, between the 50th to the 74th percentile, and then above the 75th percentile. So students that are above the 75th percentile, we are considering well above grade level, whereas students below the 25th percentile are considered at least 1 year below grade level. So note, when you're talking about this in terms of statistics and numbers, any changes of 1 to 2% are not considered statistically significant. Say that 3 times. So just to kind of show you over time, we're maintaining, in general, we're maintaining our kind of bands of our percentile. So we currently have about 40% of our students right now falling within that below 25th percentile. 29% as of winter falling between the 25th to 49th percentile, and this is just for grade 6 math. One thing to kind of do a heavy note is that we're in an expanded implementation phase of some new instructional approaches that we are partnering with OTL on. We've been providing some professional development on. And so these instructional practices, just like any new implementation of a new curriculum or an instructional approach, it takes a while to kind of get up and running and see it, realize those results. So we're excited to see kind of what we're going to come out with in the spring. But at least right now, if a student is maintaining their percentile from fall to winter and then into spring, then they're maintaining that grade level's worth of growth with what we want to see in them. Ultimately, for students that are below that threshold of what we see between that 40 to 60, we want to see them improving and going up into that. So we want to see numbers that are kind of low on the left side of our charts, and then getting higher as we get farther to the right side of these charts, as you'll see each of these in each grade level. But these instructional approaches that we're taking in terms of math are providing higher levels of engagement with each other as students, talking about their learning with using academic vocabularies that they may not have known before, and we're directly teaching that, and then getting them up and moving. So using vertical surfaces to really kind of explain their thinking and their rationale behind what they're learning. And then this information is also helping us to make sure that those students that need that high dose tutoring, that need the biking time after school in terms of support, and any sort of RTI or intervention is also designed for the students that are falling behind in terms of the certain threshold below the 23rd percentile. In grade 7, we go to the next one. You kind of see a very similar kind of event at this point. You'll see that some students kind of slightly moved into above that 75th percentile. And then in grade 8 is where you see the biggest amount of change. This is the kind of overall image that you want to see in terms of teaching to all students, where we're seeing low numbers as we're looking at below 25th or the 25th to the 49th, and then seeing higher numbers of students moving into those higher bands. So the students that are in that 50th to 74th percentile, from the fall, we had 17% of our students, and in the winter, we had 25% of our students. So quite the jump there, and that is statistically significant in this case. So the kids moving from the higher percentiles, but then also not losing any students at the high end. So we want to make sure that we're teaching to all learners. So at the high end, we're maintaining those students at 7% of our population above the 75th percentile.
Okay, so ditto for star for reading. I just like the same. There's other just take a look at. You can start go to the next slide. We'll start looking at our grade level. 6th grade for reading. So I oversee the young department here, also a language arts teacher for a very long time here. We see that our students who are in the 25th percentile are moving into that 25th to 49th percentile, which is good. We're looking to see that movement. We're closing their gaps and moving them where we want to see them going. We are excited about the benchmark program coming in. We've done a lot of pre-work with our 6th grade teachers. That's the program you all approved. That's going to continue into our 6th grade here. And I think they're really excited about it and taking a look at the program myself, working with the teachers, we are going to see some big strides we're really thinking moving forward. And we're excited to look at what our spring scores actually were. It's kind of hard that we did this a little bit before. And the next slide is our grade 7. We don't see much of a change here. When I was talking about the large part, it's due to they're maintaining their length, and at the upper levels, that's kind of you see that. So that happens. There's not as many jumps, but again, we're hoping to see a little bit more of an increase for our spring scores, and taking some hard look at the curriculum for 7th grade as well. And then our 8th grade, excuse me, that's our highest ones. You're seeing a lot of the students jump from that 25th to 49th percentile into the 50th to 74th percentile. So reaching not only our lowest learners and pushing them forward, but pushing those kids into being on grade level, which is really where we want to see our kids. So lots of positives moving forward, but yes, we have some work to do, and we've got some good strategies in place, continuing our student discourse, as you've heard already. As we know, those are some really big strategies when it comes to reading and writing and getting their thoughts down on paper.
That's about half a question each. I have a couple of questions. Name results. Do we get those back individually, or do they just?
No, we don't get them back at all, actually. They're totally anonymous, and Nate uses those results just kind of as a whole composite.
You get a collaborate with the whole country, and it gets reported.
Exactly.
The nation's report.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They'll call.
Yeah, we don't get any of those results.
Thank you. And just to congratulate scheduling. Good to be where we are in this one. You're doing a great job. Anyway, anyone else have something?
Yeah, it's just for you for that question. Explain why you asked the question and how that, I see what you're saying, but yeah, how do you determine that it's a great job versus what do you see in that makes it so special? Because I'm not an educator, so you're an educator.
Scheduling?
Yeah, scheduling, you're talking about getting the efficiencies and getting more kids seat time. Is that what you're doing?
You're talking about knowing what you're going to need for teachers, knowing what you're going to need for classes, knowing where kids are going to be. And it drives people nuts not to get that until the end of August. And sometimes we've been there, and that we're not going to be there this year is wonderful. That's what I meant.
Thanks.
Teachers were going away for the summer, very happy, right? I'll release. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but Don did defer to me, so I will say, thank you again for a tour. And it's nice to see so many positive things happening at the middle school, especially when I have both of my children here. So that's really great. So thank you.
And thank you all. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
District, thank you.
Okay, looks like we're ready to move on to the next topic, which is just the opportunity for questions, if anyone has them. Don't send them to me. We asked for them in advance, so I'm guessing that we don't have anything more to ask about that, but I did ask, I did bring up one point that we're going to talk about tonight, and that's the students we've always said, you said
Right.
we have something in the packet.
We do. Thank you very much to my team for pulling all that together so quickly. But Jeff actually had sent a question last time. He sent it to Andrew.
Oh, okay.
So, right. So
Okay, so let's start with that.
should we
then.
start with that? And I mean, it went to Andrew, so I don't want to take over here. Anybody on the team can certainly answer. You want to take a stab at this, or do anybody feel passionate about number? Let me read the question so you all know. So why do the various testing organizations / government bodies, so the different types of testing, right, that we've talked about, why do they not use a standard sample size for student growth? I understand wanting to compare your students to the national, but the national education system is so fractured in performance, it seems almost unfair to make that comparison. I assumed the national tests, such as NAEP / STAR, would compare students to its in-state peers, and then a comparison of the Connecticut results would be made to the national. You know, I love numbers, but it seems strange to see these test bodies making some of these comparisons. The comparison at the end of our presentation last time made lots of sense. Thank you, Jeff. Comparing against the DERG as we presented when we were back at FERBS at the beginning of the month, and then to compare against the students across the state of Connecticut. Then it's a bar for national performance. It could be inserted depicting that Connecticut is still a good place for education. So I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the question is why so many different.
Everybody compares to a different bar. So even you guys have to present the results. The data, the comparative data given to us is the same. You know, you would try to compare them and you're comparing one test against the national, one test that is given nationally against the state. The results that you get to provide to us are, I guess, not apples and oranges per se, but it's just difficult to make that comparison to judge growth.
So I will say this, in terms of the state tests, like we have ESPA and SAT, those tests have different scales, but the state maps them onto a single scale so that we are able to do the kind of comparison that you're talking about. Both of those tests are criterion, standards-based tests. So it's not comparing kids to each other at all. It's comparing, it's saying how kids do relative to a benchmark, if that makes sense. STAR is a completely different kind of test. It's a norm reference test. So it's more looking at how a student does relative to other kids like them, which Gavin was kind of talking about. So the growth measure in STAR, let's say we all took the test and performed at about the same level, we would all be in the same group. And then STAR would look at how much we all grew compared to each other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's not relative to the standard. With STAR, we can get a scale score, which is more of an objective measure. So there's all kinds of data in STAR. I mean, this stuff is really complex and figuring out the best way to share, look at it. But I do think like all the wisdom in assessment is that you want to have multiple data points and not draw conclusions about kids based on one data point. So I don't know if Andrew has anything to add or any.
Sure. Thank you. That was great. And Tracy and I were actually talking about this. We were saying how nice it would be to, in fact, have an option to compare our students to the state. Of course, the population wouldn't be as good, and therefore, statistically, how valid, reliable might the results be. And furthermore, STAR isn't a required assessment as part of the state. So I'm not actually sure how many districts in the state of Connecticut use STAR as their universal screener, which brings me to my next point, that STAR is a very different assessment from Smarter Balance, and that it gives us very specific information to make instructional decisions, whereas a Smarter Balance is more of that summative, here's your end of year look at how our students doing. So we have different assessments that serve different purposes, and therefore the statistics vary to give us the kinds of information we're looking for.
That's very helpful.
In the state of Connecticut, honestly, you know, it's really great to have the kind of autonomy that the local LEAs have, right? But having said that, there's what Andrew just said is so true, right? There's no consistency from town to town, which makes it very difficult, you know.
Sounds useful to know, and it might be useful the next time you do a presentation to explain that piece. How when you're taking the numbers of one kind of an evaluation versus where they're not comparative. The growth in one doesn't, it's not similar to growth in another because they actually mean totally different things.
Yes. Yeah. For example, the STAR is more for the identification of students who might require greater supports or enhanced supports. Whereas a Smarter Balance is more of that end of the year, here's really stated.
I guess my follow-up question is maybe you could take us through at some point as I do this. Which one? Care more about we expect all of the results, but which one should we really be focusing on to accurately represent the growth of our students? And everybody wants better score, everybody wants to see growth, but which ones matter the most? I know that's a hard question to answer, but
well, I'll tell you that, and it's one that we can never get reported on. It's the formative assessments. It's those on-the-cuff assessments that our teachers do in the moment, on the day-to-day, to understand where our students are at any particular moment. That's the best assessment.
And you have to also.
And yeah, you can never quantify that.
And you have to also think about the fact that these are high stakes tests. There's anxiety around taking these tests. It's a snapshot in time. It's one moment in time. We should never allow this to necessarily define a student. Some kids are A students. The teachers see it every single day, but they're terrible test takers, right? So there's a lot to look at here. Yeah.
I promise question 2, she's going to read much shorter.
Question 2, actually, that's an easy answer too. So his other question was if we had the choice to give the presentation that we gave last month, the state assessment data to school improvement at any point during the year, which month would we choose? Why, you know, and why? So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's one of those philosophical questions. Andrew and I talked about it really quickly, and we kind of thought probably at the beginning of the year. And just sort of as a disclaimer, the reason that we didn't do it is because every school presentation, like the one that the middle school just gave, included that information in it at the beginning of the year. So we didn't give the whole district lens, but there's value in that. So if this committee prefers, if it pleases this committee, we can certainly present this year's site assessment data in the fall, at the start of the school year.
We will probably do. I'm going to take the retention policy report off the agenda just because we won't have time to do that. Policy, I think, will take a while tonight. There's still one question left left on the testing though, and we got some information
Yes,
in.
we did. And I'm gonna have Tracy jump in and share that, right? Because she's the one who pulled it all together and it was a Herculean task, so you know. Lots of psychometrics or whatever involved, right?
Formulas and spreadsheets. So I think there's you have slides for that?
It's career versus non-career. That's the attachment, right? That's what we're talking about, right? Yeah.
So I'll just set this up. You had, Mr. Kitsko had the question, but prior to hearing it from you, me personally hearing it from you, Brian had asked the question out loud at one of the THS admin meetings. And so I don't remember exactly when that was, but it was after our winter star test administration. So the guiding question there is, do Torrington High School students who've spent their entire K-12 career to date in Torrington Public Schools perform better on standardized assessments than other students? So that's what we were seeking to answer. In looking for just some terminology, I invented the term career students with us their entire career, and then non-career students who means they've spent at least 1 year of their public education someplace other than Torrington Public Schools. I asked Deb Chapp at the high school if she could provide that data with me, and she did. She gave me a list of students who I then, dubbed career students. The data that I'm about to share with you only includes students for whom we had the winter test data and SAT data. So you can go ahead.
The SAT data, just as an aside, was not in the packet because we just got it. So we just added that. So you don't have that. Okay.
Yeah.
It will be in the presentation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then we can share it out and it does bear out our hypothesis.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So you can go ahead and show the next slide. So this is star reading. The columns on the left show our career students and the columns on the right show the non-career students. And you've got it by all students and by grade from grade 12 through grade 9. We use a threshold of a percentile rank of 40, equal to 40 or higher. So you can see those differences there for star reading based on the winter star. And then if we go to the next slide, it shows the differences in math.
So basically, I think if I can translate, if you just look at the grade 11, 2 bars, right? The blue bar are the career kids, 69.2%.
Yep.
Hit the threshold. And then the students who have had some disruptions we're at 47%.
Yeah. Okay. You can go to the next slide, which shows SAT.
So the next 2 slides we just inserted today only, and I apologize, it's just that we just got this information this timely.
So can you forward that?
I don't have any more slides.
Oh. Oh, you know what? Maybe we didn't send it to him, but it would have gone.
So I can try to
We just resume.
I thought
Because he's got PDF. That's why.
Oh, okay. Well, I can share it verbally too.
Yeah, and then we can send it to the committee.
Yeah.
Oh, you have it? Okay.
I have it here to share the numbers. So for reading, the difference is 56.4% for our career students versus 32.14%. So if I'm doing the math, that's about a 24% difference. The 56.4 of our career students is in line with the state in terms of the percent meeting benchmark. And when we look at the state, that takes into account all districts.
The Avons and the Darien, right? It's not just our Darien. So that's a really important point to take home tonight, I think. think, right?
Yes,
That-
absolutely.
That our career kids who took the SATs just a few weeks ago, we are at the same level with what the state is reporting out across the state.
Yeah.
That's something to really.
You can go to that, you can go to the state's website, it's always a year behind, but
Well, no, right, we're,
no, I know you can.
This is from March 20th.
It matches, I'm just saying, we've always been within that range, so people think we're that far behind, but I'm not saying we're not far behind, but if you go look at this state website, Connecticut, Torrington always does pretty darn good, if people get the real facts, but again, we have divisions, obviously, the school, but.
right, I think what we're trying to tease out here, and no disrespect to anybody, right? It's just that we've got this transient population, right, which really has an impact on
Absolutely.
everybody,
Right.
yeah.
And the origin of this question is the school tours we take. You go into a classroom, you see teachers teaching, you see kids paying attention, and it's decent level for the grade level. And yet we look at test scores that don't necessarily reflect that, and then that becomes the question of, well, but if a kid has this every year, doesn't that kid do good? The answer is yes. So it's no surprise. There's a correlation between the level of instruction that we give kids and whether or not the kids get that for the number of years. And that's all.
So, and I had family members out of town. They're worried about the education their kids will get in high school because surrounding towns don't give the level of class work. They don't have the UConn classes. And these people are in other schools, let's see, for instance, who consider talking about prep school or maybe Torrington, most high schools. Because the kids, especially my grandkids, are overachievers when it comes to certain things and all that. And Torrington may offer all those programs that they won't get in Litchfield. Hopefully Litchfield's not picking this up.
We need to move on. Kristen, anything to say? Yeah, thank you. And Ronnie down here, Ronnie, just say hi, she's the person of play rehearsal.
She actually did just send us an invite.
Right.
She just sent it just now.
We're doing this coming weekend and Pirates Junior, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, I think. But anyway.
Some really cool kids and pirates,
Some, I don't know if they're, better.
Anyway.
Depending on the day.
So let's move the retention policy report to next meeting.
Okay.
So we'll have a chance to, it shouldn't take long either, but I don't want to load up tonight. Top of future meetings, you can see them there. Comment for the good of the order. Kristen.
No, thank you again to the TMS staff for a wonderful tour and snapshot of what you deal with on a daily basis.
Gary.
I only heard good things about middle school doing very well, and Mike was representative with that. Thank you.
Was really impressed with the presentations that were given tonight. Even though I wasn't, even though I didn't see the screen rate at the but I think the student support thing that you have.
thank you.
Maria.
Great presentation. I remember walking in your shoes, and I like how you nicely addressed the scenic route when they go into the building. So it really hats off to all the hard work you do. Thank you.
Yes, thanks to everybody who presented tonight. Good, useful information. And I am now looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move, John.
Gary,
Second.
second. Good direction. All those in favor?
Fine.
And we're going over policy just 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Thank you, everyone.
Call over. Mr. Mangles is here, and Ms. Conway, Mr. Knight, Mr. Kisco, and myself. Can I get a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Get a motion for the approval of minutes?
So moved.
Approval of minutes, John, anybody?
Second.
All in favor? Public participation?
It's not online.
Nobody?
No.
Good. We have a slight change tonight, I think, in terms, John thought it might be a long meeting, but just to deliver, the discussion step B, policy for give strength and request, I think, up to suit apprentice. There are a lot of, if you read through that, everybody, they should be for Monday next meeting, the next board meeting. There are some things to review, and we thought maybe get your opinion on Monday. Because I don't think we'll accomplish anything tonight, but everybody discussed 5 different options, or whatever options we think are appropriate. I went through all of them. I like some better than other, I like some, some parts of certain policies better than others. So, Sue would suggest that maybe everybody look at it before Monday, and we really try to finalize on Monday, or discuss it on Monday. And then we can move it forward as part of the board, rather than anything here, because we won't get anything. In my opinion, we won't, but you guys can tell me what's Monday. We have a special meeting on Monday night.
We move every night.
This week and last.
Right.
Is this the same one that we've been discussing now regarding the,
So the first policy on the agenda is the armed security.
We're gonna discuss that tonight, armed security.
The second one you're talking about is the accepting donations in exchange for naming for the building.
okay.
All these attachments here.
Yeah.
But they not know about Monday?
Yeah.
Okay. Just so you're okay, I'm not sure.
There will some background. This was discussed at several policy meetings previously, so yeah.
Didn't we amend the policy last year, Ellen, to accommodate somehow?
Well, we did this last month. We brought this policy forward last month, but for a very different reason. It was, remember, we brought it with the social media policy and
Right.
instructional materials about the donors choose type of campaigns that teachers were running. That's why we brought it forward to tighten that up just a little bit. We added one line about making sure people had receipts when appropriate and that sort of thing. But this is for a different reason.
I mean, this is relative to the school, the new high school, and people wanting to make bequeaths or gifts or names on the school. I don't think we have a policy that really is clear enough, and at least that's the interpretation.
Well, a year ago, we were asked to check with the attorney.
Right.
And we got very conflicting answers from different attorneys. Correct,
Yeah.
correct. That's
Yeah,
what.
we got an email on that to clarify.
Right, so that was a year ago. It depended on who you asked. And then we had reached out to the city's corporation counsel. And then Attorney Michelle passed away, and there was a lapse before they appointed someone new. I was asked to reach out to the new corporation counsel. I did that, but at the same time, concurrently, it seems like you got a different
We got a different response
Answer. from your attorney, right?
and our interpretation is the Board of Education can make the determination as to what we allow, what we don't allow, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable.
That's pretty much what Mike said too,
Yeah, but we did get the guidance from somebody else in the past that
that said you don't want to go down that path.
we don't want to go on that path.
Right.
I think
Right, that was.
Is 3051 a shipment policy currently?
Ours is modeled, ours is exactly a shipments policy, yes.
but it's not, it doesn't really address some of the things that we're faced with now. There was a little bit of confusion, so.
I had to comb through some meeting minutes for another town the other day. It was Wallingford, and in their BOE meeting minutes, I noticed that they were approving donations. I didn't go look at what their policy says, but
Yeah, that's
they approve donations in the regular board meeting minutes.
Yeah, some of the policies that we have here as, you know, something to look at and digest, have some of those, approach it that way. Some boards in town or some communities approach it that way. Other communities are very limited. Other communities are very extensive in how they look at those things. So if everybody can read what's in today's agenda and do your own
Packet, whatever.
Yeah.
and digest it, and then we can talk about, they want to talk about Monday night, so I said, well, let's do that then. Because I don't think we'll accomplish anything tonight.
Monday nights, we have a meeting Monday night.
Yes, we have a special meeting tonight.
Special meeting.
I thought that was for the building project.
Well,
Well,
I don't know. But here, I don't know if you want to bring up a policy thing there or not.
well, that's what they want to do. I didn't, and
That might just gonna be long.
no, I don't think that's, but there'll be longer tonight, but nobody's looked at it yet.
Well,
There's too many options here. I mean, there's too many choices here. We have to actually craft the full policy. Unless you want to look at it now, and then we'll push it off. But they asked that I just suggest we do it Monday night as a further discussion.
and we'll see how we do with the first one.
What's that?
Let's see how we do with the first one and then how much time is left.
Yeah, I didn't expect us to actually, to not look at it. Most of us are, I'm sure, read the packet, so we
haven't seen it.
we've looked at it, but some haven't. But the point being, if we just take all this to Monday, it's gonna
If you want to do it, that's fine, but I don't know what we can do other than pass it to them.
are we expected to make a decision Monday? Like, I'm gonna, because then there's the whole intertwining with building committees because they're, I need this now. Kind of like,
But my point is tonight, we're just going to be passing it to the Monday meeting. And that was what they suggested. I thought we were going to go through it tonight. I was told one to try to defer it. If you don't want to do it, we won't, but.
I'm not.
No, I know. No, I didn't say that. You are right. We never said, I think it was right. See how much time it takes to get through the rhythm. Then if there's time, we'll have a few minutes and at least get some preliminary thinking out of the. That's fine. The next step was serious. I don't know, if you want.
Even if it goes Monday. Does it have to come back to this committee to move to the full board first?
I think the intention was not to, but I don't know. And if we had to, I don't know. Right. Precedent is.
I was just saying procedurally, I think it has to.
Yeah, precedent is that things get reported out of policy committee and sent to the board before the board makes them policies. So I would say we're in a position to.
Ed brought it up, all of them, but in the past, we have decided just to move something to the board and finish it or discuss it at the board meeting rather than, like, time we could have voted just to pass to the board meeting. You probably more than me.
Right, but the policy committee recommends to send it to the full board, not the building committee.
Oh,
So if the building committee wants to look at it,
oh, this isn't for the building to look at, that's for us to look at. Because the building committee needs decisions maker, that's all. We have to come up with a policy that allows the building committee, and not even the building committee, it's really the board and the building committee to come up with a way to assess the people who want to donate money to the building, what they want to give, because there's actually somebody out there wants to give us a bench. It's a class of 74. And we can't accept it. And the bunch has to be ordered. And it's like an 8-month delivery. And so it's been talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks at a building committee. We have to have a policy that allows us to make the decision necessary, whether it's naming classrooms, whether it's naming, what we'll accept for naming, all those things that will go into the finalization of the school. It always raises lots of questions, and that's why everybody's been saying you got to address it. You have to come up with a policy, because otherwise we can't address it. We don't have a policy. That covers all those things. So it's been back and forth, back and forth. We can vote.
it was when the turf field and advertising for the field and what to put on the fences, and yeah, it's a large discussion.
So I could go through the ones that I've read already and go through what I don't like about them, but I don't think that's going to get us anywhere tonight, other than everybody reading them first.
Well, let's start with, why don't we go through number 1, because that's probably just a quick,
Yeah,
right? And you all, that in executive session and this was covered,
Yes, correct.
right?
I agree. So let's do that then.
So this is, the armed security officer draft policy that Michael actually drafted, and it has the legal references. I'm sure you had a chance to look it over. he would like to get something passed as soon as possible so that we can start working on this.
Well, that won't be till the May meeting anyway, you know, if we send it out.
Right.
So it's, maybe.
Has this been vetted with our attorney? Or it won't until after we? I think he was expecting that you would take a first pass at it, see what you thought. Okay. And then he would have it looked at before the May board meeting, if it was decided to move it to.
Just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is available to us through a grant. So there's no additional funds being used.
This was initially brought up in one of our executive sessions and it was kind of spelled out what this was, what the offering was. I have no problem with it.
Of course, I think it's a great thing.
Right. But
Right, Michael feels really strongly.
Yeah, our schools can only be safer, so.
anybody has any issues or questions? Glenn?
No, I'm reading.
No, I do
I
not.
wasn't prepared.
Remember, that was discussed in the executive about this.
We didn't have the policy.
I know. Do you answer? Any questions?
When you'll remember right number. Yeah.
Just basically box out who you can hire to do this, and that was the purpose qualifications.
Right, right, it's just protection.
It's just protection to make sure you have the qualified individuals filling these positions with appropriate checks.
Yeah.
Well, it puts us on record as supporting the idea of having these people in buildings as well.
Yeah, within the confines of the problem.
Well, I'm just gonna go on to the next discussion, and if you have any questions, you can ask us. You want me to wait, Glenn? Yeah, I want to move it to.
You want to move it next to the.
I want to get on related before you ask questions. Yeah, good.
Okay, so full board, and there was an ask that we make sure.
I don't like box you out.
Okay. You're gonna do a motion.
I hear a motion to move it to the full board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's move on to circulating for 3 years now. Yeah, if you want to look at the package, do you have the package? You want this? Yeah, you want it in your.
This was the, I don't have the package. They put it in. I wear.
There was an agenda.
Yeah, access. Yeah, there's a number of different options, examples of what other communities have used. The first one, Albuquerque, is short and sweet, but I don't think it covers enough if you look at the rest of them. So when you go to the next one, and again, look at Belmont if you want to.
Yeah.
That's it, that's what else it is in there.
Rest, do you have more agendas or no?
I think you're sending it, you have a paper copy in front of you, right, Mark?
Yeah, I gave my paper copy.
Oh, all right.
I'm looking at my phone, but I don't know.
If you send it to me, that's great.
Yeah, she's got an email.
All right, okay. Thank you.
It's on the district page. Yeah, it's on, it was on the website.
Yeah, you pull the packet from the.
That was there.
It just says SIC.
Yeah, it got added over the weekend.
And there was some confusion as to what tonight's meeting was going to be about. We talked about.
It's gotta be dress code. Are you glad we got switched?
But
The issue that came up previous was when you name something, do you name it for so many years and then someone else can name it?
You mean change the name midway?
That's hard. Also for advertising, if you open up advertising, well, anyone can advertise then, like a tobacco company. Do you want a tobacco company advertising in a school?
I think there was something about cannabis.
Cannabis, you know,
And some of these policy addresses that will not imply endorsement of any business or product.
Well, when we had this conversation the first time, actually it was in this very room, remember? We were talking, one of the board members who's no longer on this board shared a story about Boston, remember? And how once you open this door, anybody can come in and right? Somebody should, remember Justin told us about. It was organization came in with a flag and then there was a flag from another student. The organization that denied them and they won.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. And that's kind of where everything just got like, you know.
Well, and that's why if you look at some of these other communities, they address in detail, I think, some of the things that they experience, like Valley Central, you know, the dedication, how long the world gets to last. You know, they probably experienced a lot of those problems and then they adjust their policy accordingly. You know, again, with the new school, there've been a lot of requests to do a lot of things. And I think the building committee, really, Mario at the lead, has wanted us to give a greater definition or more clarity as to what we can accept and will not accept.
Who decides, Gary, whether it's accepted? Like, is
Well, that's our, I mean, most of these want the Board of Education, most of the policies to make the decision.
is there like a sitting committee that hears the request, like, I want to put a waterfall in the middle of the courtyard, you know, like.
Not right now.
I'm gonna share a little bit past experience. So you're right, the policy staff need to time first, and then in my previous life in another district, I was a member of a similar committee, but it was also an arboretum connection too, because people want trees planted in memory of maybe staff or students who have passed. The committee had to make a determination of the size of the plaques, because there was a lot, well, I can pay for this size plaque versus I'm paying for this size plaque. So all these little details are really important. That's why that policy is so key. And there was an arborist who sat in the committee to help determine and make sure like where trees are planted so that roots don't grow over time and damage foundations. There's a lot of work that I never knew until I started on the committee.
I was doing some research in the district in New Hampshire. I could probably find the link and send it again, that allowed community members to donate really anything that was new, didn't have any signage on it, just benches, trash can, various things, and they tried to make it to keep the property cleaner and nicer looking. And then the school got their maintenance contract for the landscape for the next year and saw a 15% increase because people had to know good mowed open grassy areas. They tried to turn it into like a park, like a very inviting park area. They had this one section off to the side of the school that was very much open land, and they wanted to make it more inviting. And then all of a sudden, you have to stop. You can't take big mowers. There are a lot of other things to think about. You know, what happens, some schools have a policy on the grounds for removal, an endorsement, because you have, situations where throughout the country, somebody gets accused of something and you see the react, which direction it's going to go. Are they going to wait until the trial? Or are they going to say, no, we're distancing ourselves now?
Yeah, somebody's addressed that.
Somebody's right here, but
It's complicated.
they were complicated. Some of them were kind of vague about, where to get the money to do this. What are you doing? Are you replacing it with something else? Is it coming out? One district said after we get X number of complaints, we're ripping it all out, which was kind of interesting. But
So everything that you folks are saying is what was shared. Kim and I actually spoke with the attorneys years ago when this was first brought up. And that's what they said, we don't want to do this, but, yeah.
I think we kind of need to separate this into two things, because if it's the building committee, we might be talking about larger sums of money.
No,
Okay.
over $500 requires approval. So It's also principle, but as well as the superintendent of schools shall evaluate administrative regulations governing the acceptance.
I think this policy kind of addresses things, you know. Cannot bring unanticipated costs.
Which one are you referring to, Glenn? Sorry.
Our current.
Oh, the current. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Will not bring unanticipated costs, so it kind of addresses Jeff thing, we can't just pop up everywhere, and then Jack person's gonna get pissed and he's gonna increase our costs, right? It can't enforce any business or product. I mean, some of the things that are basic here, I don't think anybody's really offered any big donations to our district in how long?
Well, I think with respect to the new school,
Yes.
I think we're talking about big donations.
So exactly what I'm saying.
Like, you want to room
You need to separate that. I think because the monies is really part of the building committee and the building projects. They manage those monies and the donations, that we have to accept it.
It's a donation.
The building committee wants directions from us as to what we will accept.
They can't make decisions.
But is the building committee accepting a donation or is the city? Because it's city
No, the Board of
funded,
Education.
state funded.
No, the Board of Education.
Yeah,
That was the
that's what we cleared up with
That was the-
the council. It's all about the board of ed.
That's what we thought. That's what we were told last year. Now it rests on our shoulders.
So how are we gonna address someone wants to leave a $1 million donation towards a Board of Education? How do we address that?
Well, that's part of the reason, like some of these policies actually do address the other communities, they do address them. Some actually define, you know, what can be accepted and what the level of, I don't know, the person may have to have achieved.
Just manage your expectations at this point.
Well, or at least at a minimum, define something that allows us to make some of the decisions that we're going to be faced with, not just at that school, but just going forward. Because
Or are we gonna decide, keep what we have, and this is what we're gonna use? It depends on what comes out after discussion.
true, but what we have won't allow to do some things at the new.
Right.
Right.
That's the message that maybe not everybody's getting is that, yes, when this policy 100% has all these details in it, but the building committee is saying, look, we want, people are approaching us to do these things. Can we change it so we can get these things? That kind of is the approach. Like, yes,
These are things that would enhance and they're not reimbursable by the grant, right?
Right.
So they're things that would, yeah.
Some of these policies in other districts also say, if you're going to give us this money, there are certain restraints. You know, somebody donates, somebody gets a scholarship, even like back in the day when they had the scholarship fund. You could say, before it was the big trust version of it, the little tiny scholarships, you could say, I want somebody to get this money who's going to do this and this. And if it's not this, then don't give the money out. That's not
It's restricted.
restricted donation, which is not allowed anymore.
Oh, it is. We do it every June. Yeah, the first Thursday in June every year. The thing is, if you do a restricted donation, it can only go to that. If it can't go to that, then you're supposedly obligated to give the money back.
Okay, maybe the misunderstanding.
For that.
What I was going is just,
To use that for something.
some of these policies don't allow for somebody to say, I'm gonna give you $1 million only if you do this
Right.
with the money. So there's a lot of pieces to the policy that.
Well, some actually dedicating a facility, like one for Valley Central, you know, the dedication, naming of a building or facility for a person who has an extraordinary and rare. It's an extraordinary rare event which requires the board to consider lifetime achievements of the individual for this permanent recognition. I mean, there are thresholds and things we have to go through, not us, but we may have to go through.
Right, and then we have to figure out who has the authority to make that decision
Which is-
on that particular. Right, because what if it's something that this board doesn't, what if it doesn't really appeal to, right, it's something you don't really want.
Now, how do you take the name off of it? How do you take the name off of something? That's all addressed. Right. And I'm saying,
I was gonna open up a can of worms and wanted to ask. Because I don't know if it's still there, it should be still there, but there was a bench in memory of Sean Collins. What happens to that? That was in the courtyard, it was, yeah.
So from what I understand, because there was one right in the main island, which is no longer an island, buses live around. They're there, but I believe they're stored somewhere right now, but they're supposed to go back. So this is
Yeah,
more.
it's in the courtyard that was between Well, it's where the library is now, but the hall, the corridor.
Right, across from the curious whether one was there forever.
She would have been a class of 88. It might take.
Yeah. I think that was my class, that's was deceased.
This is why we need to kind of.
Right, I think also
Still trying to show it.
yes, that was,
This is
yeah.
makes the can of worms.
I know that.
Okay.
This is.
I mean,
Yes.
everybody else, because. That's the agenda. What's that?
It's on your agenda.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear it. I'm just saying, that's the reason why I thought.
So it's written now, the board doesn't make any decisions. It's the superintendent in consultation with the principals.
I know.
We don't make any decisions.
No, but we have to. Listen, people believe that we need to be involved in the process. And some of the things that are becoming forward to us may or may not be things, especially related to the school, but there are people who want to donate, and put their name on a certain room. We may or may not agree with that. Some of the people I'm hearing about, I probably would agree with. But, the recent, somebody graduated your class, for instance, but we don't want to get, we don't want to get in a situation where the board is left out of this. I don't think we do anyway.
Is there any precedence that like how, this, I know this was a long time ago, but the gymnasium is named after. Yeah, Huntington. Yeah, right. I mean, I know that was a very long time ago, but was there a process when that was?
I remember Patty Donahue, but I don't remember any process to put it in the taxes.
I think there,
Maybe it's late sixties, maybe.
yeah, I think there was one, but it was way before.
And there was a talk about moving that forward.
I would assume if it says it's the same structure now, it's still the same steel beams, that's technically the same.
That's, I don't, again, clarity.
Yeah,
But some board members, some people that are involved, they're saying, we have to keep his name there. And others are saying, well, do we need to? I would say, hopefully, probably we should, but I don't know if we can. I mean, I don't want to fight in these meetings over what we can and cannot do in our words.
I think there's more to it when dealing with the building committee. It's just stuck in my brain and I'm stuck in Italian, I'm sorry, but if someone wants to donate furniture or gym equipment, which came up, that would come out of the FF&E package,
No,
right? There's just, all right, just say for argument's sake, whatever they're donating was something that they wouldn't have to purchase, that may have been in the plan and specifications for FF&E.
we'd save that money.
Right, we would save that money. Does that become something that's, well, state funding? That's, I still got that in my head. Whatever we accept, how does that affect?
Well, that was something that
that's-
Mike
I see what you're
Magistrelli did caution about. He did, he said,
I see
make
what you're
sure that whatever you're accepting does in no way interfere with the money for the building project itself. But like the other night, for example, there was a $68,000 price tag on some fitness equipment that would not be covered through the reimbursement. But there are people out there who are saying they'd like to make a donation of fitness equipment in exchange for naming.
But
So,
I don't think we want to rely on.
Oh, it's for me. Then now we accept it.
yeah, if there are strings attached, correct?
But not for a naming. We accept it because they want to make a donation to the athletic department for weights or whatever.
Yeah, but they have
They
a
want-
plaque that says donate by.
Yeah, I mean, right now, before the building committee, we would accept, I want to donate $10,000 for weights for the, thank you very much for your donation, we'll get weights. There's no strings attached. So now people are asking, I want to donate $10,000 because I like Mrs. So-and-so in English, so I want that English room, A12, with my name on it.
Yeah, now it's up to the superintendent to decide.
But the superintendent, regardless of who happens to be the superintendent, I don't think is gonna want that.
No, I don't think they should.
I don't think there's anything in this policy right now that would
There is.
allow a naming on the village.
Correct.
So that just allows to, yeah.
Correct.
They should be better.
Naming of the building was not part of this.
So,
For one part would be accepting the donations, and one part is the naming.
Is in-
In kind.
Right.
But I guess really, the board has to decide if they want
to have a school full of named rooms. I mean, that's a
decision.
But I also think, thinking of the future, if we're not here and the superintendent's not here, I don't think all the responsibility, like Glenn said, I don't think all the responsibility should be on the superintendent.
I don't think any of it should be. I don't think any of it should be.
Right.
Over $30 amount, I think.
I mean, the way the policy is written now, yes, yeah, right, with respect to, because that's what this was intended for, like the daughter's choose and that sort of thing. Right, but and small donations to be used in the specific school. Right, but not for what we're talking about here. Right. And there's no cap on it. It's just anything over 500. So.
Will you be getting to draft anything?
No, we're starting. The examples to start with, because they're all different, but they all bring up very good points. And they've all probably they've addressed these things over time more than likely and have the same problem. And there are multiple ones online too. You know, Mario downloaded a bunch. I went through them. I mean, yeah, Jeff looked at them. They're out there. And you know, it may take 2 or 3 meetings. I don't know, but we have to address it now and then figure out how we're gonna.
Well, we only got 2 meetings left.
Well, now we got 2 meetings. At least start.
We should not let, regardless of who it is offering to make a donation, the urgency of a donation guide this committee and this board. You know, we should take the time, do the policy right, get all the proper input, and do it right. And then look, if whatever it is that somebody wants to donate shows up 2.5 months later, because we took the time to set this process up for the next 25 years, or whoever decides to look at it next. So these items show up 3 months later. I mean, that's just my opinion. But
No, you're right, but we have to start the process.
I agree. I mean, that's what we
You know, yeah, exactly. Anything? Happy we can?
I think you should share your example that you sent to me, honestly.
Please don't.
Yes, I do, because I think that's what Jeff is saying in a different way. Do we really want every room to the building to have a name on it? Or like Mary Ann said, you know, pretty soon people are gonna come out of the woodwork wanting to plant trees with little headstones. I mean, it's gonna look, you don't want to, that's sanitary either.
I agree. I don't.
you decide.
It's very difficult.
That's
when you see what happens.
Do you think like three students or two? It's difficult.
Are you gonna say that we're only gonna take 71 planters? I mean, in order to really, I mean, that's, how do you put a number to these things that we'd be here for a year?
But trying to figure out a policy that at least is somewhat comprehensive and understands at least some of the things we're going to be looking at and deciding how to manage those. And then things will come along. But some of these things say, okay, once it's decided, you can't change it.
I think it's
Others say you can.
boards on Monday. But do you want a school full of donated things and plaques, or do you not? As a starting point, because it helps structure this, how far you have to go down the road of the policy. If somebody says, I would love to have this donated to this, then we have to think of all those details. If 8 people on the board say, you know, that's ridiculous, and you know, I love it, I love the community involvement, but that's a bunch of headaches that we don't want to have to deal with respectfully. However the board decides to go with it, but it structures how much work this committee has to.
But it's really like, it's really important. The policy is so key. I can't stress how many times after sitting on the committee for years, the policy is so essential. You never do want that superintendent to have that amount of pressure from one person, especially when you're dealing with grieving families. You have to have a group that works together.
Do you have the policy? Well, that was.
I would have to dig it up. It was a previous life.
No, which committee was it? Could we just?
It was region when I was at Housatonic, and it's in a beautiful campus up there. But it's an Arboretum committee.
But it would probably be on there.
Oh, I could contact Dave, I'm sure.
I mean, that would help. Some of those.
And that's why the turf field isn't named either.
Because they had this conversation and said, or because they followed the policy.
We followed the policy and we had this conversation several policy meetings, right?
But even if we're gonna sit on our committee.
It's also nice to think about, like Gary said, you know, it'd be nice to have some of these things that we can afford, that people are willing to.
Right.
But also, I personally, I wouldn't want to see every room have a plaque on it.
Of course
I
not.
don't want to become Greenwich. And nothing against.
Can neighbor room unless you actually pay for the actual structure.
Oh, no, that sounds really.
You can sell the name.
Say, unless you actually pay for this structure of this library, we're not putting name in it.
Right, we have a whole library, but right now it's up to the superintendent. But if he decides he wants
So
to.
the auditorium was named after Doc Starr, who's the first principal of the school there, and Region 1 is the first regional high school in Connecticut.
Okay.
So that's why they chose the auditorium, was going to, they chose the first principal's name to be, so that, you know, he's not gone. There's so many names, I'm sorry, there's so many names in Torrington that go generations.
McKenna.
Is there a way to do it so that, please don't, but is there a way to do it so that maybe there's, I'm thinking of like a brick wall.
I really was thinking, and I didn't feel like I could say,
Yeah,
oh,
what's fine.
said that at the meeting. Like, if you want to donate, you can pay and you get your name in the brick.
Right,
Somebody brought that up.
You can donate whatever you want,
But
but that's how we're doing it.
That's how we're-
School, right? How many years do we live in Torrington High School? I don't know what things are named in there. I couldn't tell you. Well, there's a John. Yeah. I mean, so it's as a place for someone to come to, but still needed whatever, but yeah, and then you go, that's the is an option.
the worst theater did that name for it.
Right.
But they took them all off. So many years.
So, we'll see. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking of the thing, I can say that. Yeah. Okay, I was just- Yeah. So I was going, I have.
Oh, that's okay, we'll forgive you.
Oh, I.
Create a list there. I think we got to put different criteria. One is $500 and below, right? We got to address that. Above $500. Death or grave incidents. Right, so different things you want to address, right?
I think they're all everything that, so far, that's what we've been
Well, not
approached.
necessarily, someone's talking about just donating equipment. I mean, it's so.
Memory.
It's an embryo, but.
Somebody.
Yeah, they're not gonna give us the money, they want an embryo. With the name.
There's strings attached to the donation.
That's why I think we just need to vote, discuss it at our Monday meeting, then give us time for people to.
I just think the Monday meeting's gonna.
Well, because some of the slides we have in 3/4. Start Monday, it could be the following meeting, then it might be pushed off to a special meeting.
We're gonna end up looking like NASCAR with all of those advertisers on the jacket. So we have to avoid that.
And we,
Well, I agree with avoiding that. I agree with Gary's point about not having every room named. We also don't want to turn away things and come back to the school.
Right.
so we have to establish some sort of, thresholds or rules and regulations. But I
Get
don't
a
think.
plaque on the wall, that's it.
Is it bronze? Is it gold?
We said we were going to get, I'm still kicking around today, see what?
We'll see what this is. Yeah. Right, so, I'm sorry.
You mean a hallway wall or just a wall? You know? Yeah.
Just thinking out loud, that's.
Yeah, you do motion, for discussion on Monday, Jack.
On Monday.
Okay, so moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
But good idea, man, we did get some discussion over it. That's gonna be,
You were in at work.
Oh, yeah, back to the beginning. Topics for future meetings, well. Security, back, we're gonna.
No. Your next meeting is the last meeting of the year, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Well, no sense in starting something that.
You may, if something comes up, you'll bring it up, meeting the super, Bevan Kent, so. Well, this one, please, and we'll go ahead.
So just, we're back at mentioning that at THS, correct, right, it's meeting.
I would imagine this is gonna be the only thing on next month's agenda. This is gonna take the whole night, right? The whole hour. Okay. I have to see.
Unless the chair of the committee really comes prepared.
I'm not gonna have it. It's not up for me to come up with that, it's up to you guys to discuss it. And read it before you guys.
Supposed to read something?
Don't have to read it.
Well, don't be that one, so he's ready.
No, you read a lot more than I do it better. Tell us for the good of the order?
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, sorry.
No.
Good problem.
But that's okay. That's so ridiculous.
That's you guys for friends group.
Mr. Magnus.
Deal with the great job and.
What's the adjournment?
So moved, so.
Oh. You want to assist? All of it.
Aye.
So moved.